Is he gonna hurt my feelings really badly? Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, I'm gonna be continuing on with some 5-star series. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is the last series that you gave 5 stars. Alright, so I feel like lately I have nonstop been talking about the fact that I've kind of been struggling with what I've been reading, been trying to mood read a little bit more, and going along with that, one of the ways I thought I would try to work on this and hopefully ensure I was reading books I knew I would enjoy would be continuing on with series which I've previously given 5 stars. So starting at the top was Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second one in the Founders trilogy. I read the first one, oh god, like last July, I think. What initially sold me on the first book of this series is that it's supposed to follow these characters performing a heist, and I tend to enjoy a really good heist. But not only that, I thought the magic system was very interesting because it's almost like coding, where you inscribe on an object what you want it to do, and the magic compels it to do that thing. But it wasn't only the plot and the world though, I also really ended up enjoying the characters. There's a little bit of a found family that is very unexpected that develops in the first one, so I was really excited to continue on with them and see what's going to happen next, especially because they're kind of breaking down the expectations and current systems that are established in their world, meaning I was so hyped to go on with Shorefall. It did take me a little bit to get going with this one, I'm not gonna lie to you, but that kind of happened with the first one as well, so I wasn't immediately worried that this wouldn't turn out well. But when I caught on to the fact that the author was once again setting up another heist, I knew I was in for another good time. In a little bit of a different direction, I also wanted to continue on with a romance series because Lord knows I am in the middle of so many of them. And after I read Float Plan back in February, I really enjoyed it and was hoping I would enjoy the rest of the series because I feel like I'd heard a bunch of praise for Float Plan, but not really anything about the continuing books in the series. But off of the character work and the way the author dived into trauma and the impacts that trauma can have on a person, especially when going into a new relationship, I was sure I was going to enjoy more from this author. So the next book I ended up picking up was The Sweet Spot by Trish Doller. This one is the second in the Beck Sisters series where we were following Rachel, and unfortunately at the start of the book she ends up losing her job and is kind of desperate for something else. She worked in the hotel industry and has always really wanted to become a manager of a hotel, really be able to make her mark on a hotel and the experience that guests are having. An opportunity kind of falls in her lap to be the manager of this up and coming like brewery hotel that is set on an island being opened by Mason. And given the fact that she is wanting something new for herself, trying to find something that'll work very well for her, but also her daughter. But when she gets there, it turns out the hotel is not even built yet. This one didn't immediately showcase to me the more serious elements of it in the synopsis, but there definitely are some of those included. I would consider checking out content warnings if you need them before going into this one, because once again, there are some heavier traumatic moments that affect these characters trying to establish a new relationship. Final one was A Theory of Dreaming by Ava Reid. I used to say Ava Reid was a favorite author, but I feel like now I'm kind of having to be a little bit more hesitant in labeling them as that, because she's had 2 solid hits for me, but she's also had 2 misses. So I was apprehensive going into this one, which is a sequel to A Study in Drowning, one of the books that I did absolutely love from her. But I was a little surprised to find out that this was going to become a series because it felt like the first book really wrapped up in a way that was satisfying. However, here we are once again returning to Preston and Effie. In the first book, they're kind of enemies to academic partners. Now they are a couple. They have returned to their university and are making some strides forward after the events of the first book. Trying not to be spoilery, I'm gonna do my best to not have spoilers in this video, but obviously these are sequels. If you want to go into them knowing absolutely nothing, maybe this video is not for you. But so they're moving forward off of the events from the prior book, but unfortunately it seems like the events that they experienced in the first book are having lasting impressions on Preston particularly, who starts to have these very realistic dreams of an underwater castle, and they start to plague him more and more to the point that the line between reality and fiction start to blur. Again, I was a little nervous going into this one because I didn't really know if a sequel was necessary, but I did love these characters. I loved the romance that developed between them. So I was still pretty excited going into it and hopeful that it would just add to the love I had for the first book. Hey friends, so I'm not going to say exactly at the halfway point, but I'm definitely around the halfway point into Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. And I'm so glad I came up with this idea for this video so that it can kind of encourage me to continue on with these series that I've been loving, because similar to Foundryside, the setup of this book is so up my alley. I really appreciate the fact that the author continues to keep bringing things back to heists. And the fact that we have had numerous ones in this book by this point, all over it. Absolutely loving it. Even if they aren't actively stealing something, the way they're having to plan everything out and sneak around to get to their end goal feels very much like a heist story. My biggest problem with Foundryside was I didn't feel like I was truly in love with the characters by the end of the book, except for 𝗖cie. In this one, I do feel like I'm getting more attached to them, a lot more attached actually. I've started to tab just for little moments of found family vibes. 𝗖cie and Bernice do have their romance, but like you're starting to see more of 𝗖cie being the, you know, kind of pathetic drunk of an uncle, but he loves them and he wants to protect them in the ways he knows how to. For Gregor, who in the first book we saw go through some really crazy stuff, how the other characters in this little found family have seen the impacts those events have had on Gregor and how they're worrying about Gregor's mental health more so than like his bodily health at different points. I really, really liked that as well. The villain character, terrifying, but also fascinating. I love him. He's just got some je ne sais pas, he's just got that something that makes him so interesting to watch, which is really funny to say because he has the ability to influence people just by talking to them. I definitely feel like Robert Jackson Bennett is writing that in a very convincing way because I am also intrigued by this man. I want to see more of him. I just want him to keep talking and learn about his background. Overarching plot that's going on, so good. Like really high stakes here, but also there's so many questions on either side of like, how are they going to handle this situation? And like, is this exactly what they think it is? Because from the first book, we know that things are never the same as we go into the story believing. So I am really curious to see what the author is going to pull out here. I'm really enjoying this. I like the little moments of the relationship between 𝗖cie and Bernice as well. Like it feels like at this point that they are an established couple who they don't have to act super lovey, but like anytime they do have a small moment together, just warms my heart. It's really cute. There is unfortunately an absence of one of my favorite characters. I can't go into too many specifics there without getting into spoilers for the first book, but I wish we were seeing more of that character. I really, really wish. There might be the possibility of something getting set up for that to happen, and I would love for it. I would be very here for it, but it also makes me nervous. If that character reappears, how is that going to impact everything that's going on in the plot and these other characters? So this is going so well. I'm really enjoying it every time I pick it up. It's just unfortunately one that I'm reading physically and a chunkier book, so I'm not working through it super fast, but anytime I do pick it up, I'm just glued in. I'm sucked into the page. I want to know what's going to happen next. Intrigue and entertainment through the freaking roof. I'm loving it. Hey y'all, so long time no talk because it has taken me a unfortunately long time to continue reading Shorefall, seeing as how I keep putting this book down and picking it back up. I finally told myself enough's enough. I was at halfway through this and I just needed to finish it out. So I've officially started listening to the audiobook, which part of me says is a crime because honestly, I have such set voices for each of these characters in my head that listening to the audiobook is kind of affecting my enjoyment. I'm not gonna lie to you. Even still, really, really continuing to enjoy this. The plot is definitely progressing in a way I was not anticipating. In fact, I actually thought it was very, very clever of Bennett to have things unfold in this way where it's almost as though the protagonist characters have done like half of the work for the villain. So that has made for this great twist. And then the reveal of like what the villain has planned. Obviously, this plan is clearly going to affect all of our main characters, but like one character in particular, especially emotionally devastating. Anytime we have seen this character since the villain's plans are starting to actually, you know, unfold, I just want to cry and give them a hug every time. I kind of want to give everybody a hug right now, but I'm really enjoying this. There's also been a return of one of my favorite characters. There's some aspects of the magic that are being used, which is really, really cool here. Because if you think about this, it is basically coding in a fantasy world, and how Bennett is presenting the magic and the way it's being utilized in some circumstances is so freaking clever. It reinforces the fact that it is this fantastical coding, but it's like, I never thought of trying to use it in this way. And so I'm very impressed at the world building that he has created here. I am now starting to hit the point where like I have so little left. I'm scared as to how this book is going to end. I am very worried, especially since I do know there's a third book. Is he gonna hurt my feelings really badly? I'm scared. But obviously I know it's not going to be goodbye for these characters because there is another book. As of right now, continuing to love this. It is so good. So good. I definitely need to check out so much more of this author's work. Obviously, apart from the final book in this series. Can you not put your tail like right in my face? Hey y'all, so I officially finished out Shorefall, and Robert Jackson Bennett hurt my feelings. I do not appreciate it. That was really rude of him, but this was really good. This was really good. The climax was a freaking roller coaster ride. Oh my gosh. It is this constant back and forth of like, who can we trust? Who are we suspicious of? Obviously excluding like the little family, which I adore this little family, and that ties into why I do not appreciate how Bennett closed this book out. But at the same time, it does have me desperate to pick up the next book. I am so intrigued to see where things are going to go from here. Like, I mean, where the first book closes out, you can kind of tell they're really altering this world, really starting to affect how things run. The end of this one is like, no, we are going to really just change everything about the world as we know it. And it's crazy, crazy. Like I said, the end roller coaster ride. Or are we merely ants running screaming in this situation? What can we actually do? It was wild, but really, really enjoyed this. The magic system in it is so cool. Reading the second book in this series reminds me how much I love this magic system because it's so interesting. Work out certain things and how they use this magic to do some of this stuff is just wild. It's so innovative and different. The magic system is one of the things that is most intriguing to me. I do love the characters. There's some wild events that happen for these characters as well in this one. Actually ties into the magic system. Really, really liked this. The villain character in this, so interesting. He's terrifying, but you also just want to know more about him as the story progresses. And once we finally got some actual answers there at the end, I gotta say, I honestly was not expecting that. My jaw did in fact drop. It kind of shifts the perspective of a lot of other things and like some of his other actions prior in the book. And I would love to see how that changes my reading of this character upon rereading of this book. Really loved this one. Again, I would probably also put this at like a 5-star. I can't think of any active issues I had with this. I guess a few moments here or there maybe dragged a little bit, but pretty through and through. I was so invested. The writing style is very consumable. I mean, maybe I wanted a little bit more perspective of certain characters, I guess I could say. The ending hurt my feelings. I know why he did that. I get it. Doesn't mean I have to like it.
Hey y'all, so I have officially started into my next 5-star sequel, and that was The Sweet Spot by Trish Doller. So I read the first one in the series, The Flow Plan for Arrange My Shelves. It's kind of funny because I picked this book up, well, okay, not funny, haha, but like ironic. I picked this book up with the hopes of having like a light, easygoing romance to basically bridge between 2 horror books I was planning to read, only for this book to start out with some pretty heavy trigger warnings. It immediately hit me right. Float Plan had some rather heavy topics as well, so I didn't really plan that very well, but even still, though there are some more somber moments in this, I am really just having a good time watching Rachel, our main character, who is actually the sister to the prior main character, trying to start over a new life, find a new sort of happiness for herself after, unfortunately, she is unfairly let go from her job. So she ends up taking this job to become like the head manager of a small boutique slash brewery hotel on an island in Lake Erie. So she gets there, and that is where she ends up meeting Mason, who unfortunately has recently gone through a divorce. This was supposed to be like a project he and his wife were working on. She comes to realize they are not nearly as far along in creating the hotel as she had thought. It is still very much in the building stages. So this is a really weird situation, especially having moved from Fort Lauderdale and with, again, working at this really high class hotel. But she's starting to see the appeal of like being out in the middle of nowhere, having a slower go of things, getting to really get to know her neighbors and forming a community that is more friendship than having to rely on her mom solely. As I said, there are some heavier themes going on. The first chapter does have an essay. It's not insanely graphic, but it does take place on page, so be aware of that. Mason, we do learn, unfortunately, had a daughter who ended up passing away, so I also wanted to provide a trigger warning for that. Nothing is explicitly showcased on page there, but still a rather traumatic topic to be included, especially seeing as how Rachel does have her own child. It is something that continuously does keep getting brought up because Rachel feels so conflicted with Mason being so good with her daughter, but at the same time, given the fact that Mason has still obviously not healed from what he experienced. It does have a forced proximity element because they're kind of like the only people living on this island, but there's also the forbidden aspect because he is her boss. But it is really cute that like other people in the town are already starting to ship them because they're wanting Mason to finally get a chance to move on and like find a new happiness for himself. And it's just kind of an ongoing theme with this that I do really enjoy. We are getting to see a little bit more of Anna, the main character from the first book, as well as Keen. So that's super cute and I'm here for that. I do feel like her daughter does come across as a 4-year-old. Like pretty much across the board, I am enjoying this one. Really, my biggest issue is there's been a few moments here or there where it feels like the author is trying to be like very inclusive or showcase that she is sliding diversity into the story, but it doesn't come across very smoothly. It doesn't come across as very natural. It doesn't come across in a way that seems authentic. It seems like she is trying to make it happen. And then along with that, the romance is also on the slower moving side. I mean, right now it is very much Rachel kind of has feelings for Mason, but is trying to keep a wall up, seeing as how he's her boss. And then Mason has had a few foot and mouth moments to showcase that he is interested in her, but probably has similar reservations. So it is really cute. But like I said, it does have some heavier moments. I do think it's being managed well. I don't feel like it is too hot and cold with the themes that are going on. It doesn't feel like I'm, suddenly being ripped out of one tone and shoved into another. So I am enjoying it. I just don't know if I'm quite loving it as much as I did Float Plan, but I am still enjoying it at the very least. And it reads so fast. Both of these books so far in the series have been less than 300 pages, so they're really short, easy romance reads. They just happen to have some heavier topics woven into them to kind of ground the romance stories. Hey y'all, so I have officially finished out The Sweet Spot by Trish Doller, and sadly this was not another 5-star for me. I did like this. It was entertaining. I did like the serious elements that were woven into the story. As I said, though, there were a few times when Doller would try to include some diversity to showcase she was being inclusive, and every time it happened, it felt really odd and kind of like shoehorned in a way where it's like, I could understand a person noticing something like that. I can't see them saying something like that in reality. That dialogue just feels very awkward. It was also mentioned a few times that Rachel is plus size. Overall, I enjoyed the fact that she has like I would say very realistic love-hate relationship with her body where she feels comfortable with it sometimes, but other times she is self-conscious. She can't help comparing herself to other women around her. And there was one scene that was a little odd where it's mentioned that Mason's ex-wife is actually even bigger than Rachel was. And so she like feels better about herself off of that, wonders if Mason has like a fat girl fetish, which felt like it was presented in a little bit of an odd way, I guess is how I'll say it. I also did think the third act conflict was really solid though. It was an exterior thing. It was something that I totally expected was going to happen. And I actually thought it was resolved in a very mature way, though Rachel does kind of fly off the handle a little bit at one point, but I really liked that afterwards she kind of reflects on it and realizes it, and the reconciliation was so healthy and really sweet. I really liked that. It wasn't some over-the-top thing that ended up driving them apart. It kind of ended up improving their relationship actually, so that was really solid. Across the board, there were a few things in the writing that felt really awkward throughout this, but I also just never really fell in love with Mason as a hero. I liked him. There were certain elements of him that I thought were interesting, especially given the fact of learning about his ex-wife, the loss of his daughter, and then the struggle that the two of them had trying to maintain a relationship afterwards. All of the discussions around that I really enjoyed. Apart from like I just never really got a solid feel of Mason's personality. Initially, he has this very grumpy exterior thing until Rachel digs under there and learns he's not a bad guy. It kind of felt like as the book continued, that grump element completely disappeared. And so I didn't know if that was actually something that was supposed to be true to his personality or if it was because of what he's experienced. And again, I think that just reinforced the fact that like I didn't feel like he had a really established personality to make me fall in love with him and be convinced by the relationship developing with Rachel. So overall, this was cute. It was very Hallmarky. It did have a few spicy scenes, but like 1, maybe 2 chili peppers, like not too much. I liked it. I love the family elements in it. And I'm really intrigued as to like who the heck is the 3rd book about, because this series is apparently called The Beck Sisters and there's only 2 of them. I don't know who the 3rd character is. I looked it up. I have no clue how she's related. So I am a little intrigued about that and definitely will continue on with the series. Just this one wasn't really a 5-star, unfortunately.
Hey y'all, so you don't know it, but it has been a hot minute since I have updated this vlog. I finally started into another 5-star series again, and I decided to pick up A Theory of Dreaming by Ava Reid. I just kind of got bit by the bug to return to this world and listen to it. So this is a sequel to A Study in Drowning, which I really enjoyed. I loved the character work. I really enjoyed themes that were woven into that story and the little romance between the 2 main characters. Everything about it just worked so well for me. I think Ava Reid's writing really shines there in the atmosphere, in the tone, in the themes that she weaves into the story. All of it just works so well. In this one, we are continuing on following these 2 characters, and they're back at their college. Without diving into too many specifics, Effie is now able to study literature, but she is not exactly welcomed with kind regards by the other students, by the professors, by even the dean. Preston is now starting to struggle with the line between reality and dreams. He consistently has this dream of traveling to this magical realm and actually interacting with his father, who is long passed. That's kind of all I want to get into plot-wise, so I don't take the chance of accidentally broaching spoilers. What I'm really liking about this book so far is the character work. I feel like not only are these characters very consistent to the people we met in the first book, but also I feel like you can see how they grew through the events of the first book and now how they are moving forward after finding this strength, having these traumatic experiences, and how those elements are affecting this new relationship that they have. I think the character work around all of that is just impeccable. I'm really enjoying it. Unfortunately, when it comes to their relationship, I do feel like Reid is utilizing miscommunication too often, especially after we saw them go through the whole process of trusting each other and working together in the first book. I just have a hard time believing that they would be hiding things from one another in the way that they are doing here. There is also expansion on the world itself. We know there is a war going on between the country that they currently live in, Lear, I think is how it's pronounced, but the country Preston is from, Argenia? I believe I just butchered that. Argentinian. Those 2 countries are at war. There's been some real developments in the war, which is now starting to affect the life of the college students. And that does also tie into their troubles they're having to deal with because of the revelations from the first book. I'm really trying not to be spoilery. And so with that comes some like political intrigue, and I'm liking that as well, but it's much more in the background. It's not at the forefront of the story. When it comes to the plot itself, it kind of feels like we're alternating between that, the drama around Effie being in the literature college now, then Preston having these dreams and the way he is handling them, and it kind of plays into the political element a little bit, but I am 50% into this book and it feels like very little has actually happened, honestly. Unfortunately, it's really starting to drag for me. As much as I do enjoy these characters, I don't like the miscommunication element. It seems silly that it's being used. And then I just wish elements of the plot were kind of amping up a little bit more. It almost feels like the story is trying to be more like dark academia than the first one was. And honestly, one of the things I really enjoyed about the first book was that it had the academic feel to it, but it wasn't dark academia, whereas it feels as though we're pushing into more traditional dark academia here, and I just don't really want it. It also seems like maybe just a little bit too much is going on. In the first book, we only had Effie's perspective, but now we have Effie and Preston's. I don't know. I like having both of their perspectives, but I almost wish instead this entire book was purely from Preston's perspective. And I do think Reid is talented enough to still do some of the character work around Effie that they've been doing here, but viewing it through Preston's eyes. I think they're talented enough to pull that off. So unfortunately, this is not actually going as positively as I was hoping it would. The writing itself is still beautiful. There are still occasional lines that I just absolutely can't help but annotate. And again, the character work, fantastic, especially tying into some of the heavier themes of the first book. It's so good. It really is so realistic and raw and authentic, but like tied in with some of the other things of the story, it's just making it a not as enjoyable experience as I was hoping it would be, unfortunately. So obviously I am going to continue on reading this because there is still a lot of elements of it that I am enjoying, but I'm really hoping the latter half picks up a little bit or like something really interesting happens with the plot. Hey y'all, so I have sort of finished A Theory of Dreaming. This is one of those complicated finishes because technically I read up to 75% of this book, but it hit the point where I was just so frustrated with all of the erasure to the growth that these characters experienced in the first book, and they have now regressed, I would actually say, to even worse than the characters we started with in the first book. Then the fact that this whole miscommunication thing was continuing just drove me up a wall. Very sadly, I started to skim the last 25% of this. I'm so bummed that I did not like this more. Again, I said in the intro, I didn't know if this story really needed a sequel. It was not. This basically was a rinse repeat when it came to character work, except that Preston was the one experiencing this blurring between reality and fiction from the first book. See, this is the thing. I have such complicated feelings about it because I think the character work that happens here is actually really good. I think Reid did a really solid job of showcasing characters that have gone through something very traumatic, have found their strength and grown from it and started to move forward, but still have difficulties. I mean, it's not like, you know, they had a makeover and it totally changed their entire personality. Effie is still timid and nervous and anxious. Preston is still a loner. He's a little rough around the edges, and he has a tendency to bottle up his anger. But at the start of the book, I felt like you could still see the growth that they had gone through in the first book. So you could feel the way they were still the same characters, but evolved. However, as the book continued here, it just felt like they continuously backslid and, like I said, just regressed to even worse than they were at the start of the first book. And that is so frustrating. It basically erases everything that we have watched these characters grow through and mature through. It's really irritating. But again, there's also this constant miscommunication. I don't want to tell them because I want to protect them thing that's happening between Preston and Effie, and it was exhausting. Effie is clearly dealing with some issues and Preston can see that, but then at the same time he's like, I want to protect her from anything worse so she can't know about any of my problems. But like, that's not a healthy relationship, my dude. And then by extension, Effie starts to resent Preston because he is constantly feeling like he has to protect her. But do they talk this out at any point? No, they don't. And it's so dumb. Again, early on, I felt like there were moments here or there where Effie was having these very conflicting feelings with Preston, and it made sense because of the traumatic experiences she has had with men. Obviously, she has seen that Preston is a guy she can actually trust. He is somebody she can actually rely on. But it felt like she's completely forgotten that in what was happening here. Then when it comes to the actual plot with this magical dream palace that Preston is experiencing, again, I actually liked how it was being used. I liked the way it was allowing Preston to escape from reality, kind of the same as Effie did in the first book with the Fairy King, and it tied into the war storyline that's happening in the background. It's never really been at the forefront of this universe, but it's always there. And that was something I also thought was really well done, especially given the fact that Preston is, he's mixed race for both of these countries that are currently at war, and that gives him this, and that puts him in this uncomfortable and weird situation, and he is constantly being treated poorly because of that. Really liked how that was working with the character, but it was taking so long to develop. And honestly, I think a lot of my issues with this book could have been resolved if Effie's perspective was completely removed. If we had instead focused on Preston and really had him as the forefront main character of the story, I think the book would have moved a lot quicker. We could have continued to evolve his character from what we saw in the first book. And honestly, I actually think Reid is a talented enough writer to sort of continue the character work that was happening with Effie, but through the eyes of Preston, without Effie actually having a perspective. They didn't do that. They tried to split things, and it just made it so that both storylines ended up suffering and dragging out. And I am so bummed. Not to mention the fact I am shocked that I have never seen any content warnings about this book anywhere, given how dark some of the topics and themes that are woven into it are. Nothing is ever explicitly showcased. A lot of it's more references and inferring you can make really dark stuff that is super triggering for some people. And especially given the fact that Reid has other works that go just as dark, if not darker, but they had content warnings in those books. Why was there nothing about that here? Finally, the ending. I really enjoy Reid's writing itself and the way they're able to create this like folklore feeling, how in many of their books, they create these fantastical stories within their universes and how they play into the plots. I think that's all very well done. And it gives this sort of fairy tale folklore feel that I absolutely adore for the very heavy, very dark topics going on throughout this book. The ending seems too fairy tale. It seems way too easy. Like not quite a Deus Ex Machina sort of thing, but like it definitely has the same energy. It also feels like it kind of has the message of, oh, it's okay if your mental health is shit, so long as somebody loves you. It'll fix everything. And that is such an unhealthy message to be pushing. I mean, I do not think this book should actually be labeled as young adult. I think it should be considered new adult. So if there are teenagers reading it, they are on the older side and they can realize that this is not realistic nor a healthy mindset to take. You should not be putting the entirety of your mental health on another person's shoulders, and you shouldn't be relying on this one other person to be making you happy. And then honestly, on the opposite side of it, I don't think you should idolize your significant other in the same way that Preston idolizes Effie at times. Also unhealthy. I think it could lead to some serious issues moving forward. And just, I think also ties back to why they have such serious miscommunication throughout this book. So bummed at how this fell down in the end. A Study in Drowning is a standalone in my mind now. Did not see this coming. Very bummed out, especially because I got this very pretty Barnes & Noble special edition. This was not it for me. All right, so of the 3 5-star series continuations I read, we had 1 5-star. Not really what I went into this video hoping would happen, but say la vie. Hopefully at the very least it was entertaining for you guys. All right, and on that note, that is officially it for today, y'all. So thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let's leave a key emoji in the comments down below for Shorefall, seeing as how this was the only one that was a 5-star. I have links to all of my socials as well as a few ways you can support me down in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!